So you're here. I expect there will be few enough of us tonight that I can go ahead and answer your questions directly. And I'm here mostly just so we're together. So I don't have anything brilliant to say, I promise you. I've been obviously watching all day and reading, and I've been on the phone to a bunch of people, so I might know some stuff you don't. But so ask me what you would like me to answer. That being said, let me outline where we are right now. There has been a coup attempt on the United States government. It will not succeed. It is not an organized coup in any way. Um, but I think it was more successful than even they expected to be. So there are going to be a lot of questions about, for example, how rioters managed to breach the building and get into the Senate chamber and I believe into the House chamber. Um, and I will say, I am sure I am not the only American to shed tears when we saw fighting in our capital and saw people looting and breaking windows. That's our building, and we have gone through so much to protect that building and what it symbolizes. To have those people so disrespectfully destroy what this country stands for was not an easy moment for anybody. I was actually talking to a bunch of different people, and we were all just horrified. So that being said, the question of how they managed to get in with so little resistance from police is going to be a real question. I would urge you to be really careful about assuming either that the police are the bad guys or that they're the good guys. I think we just don't know at this point. I do know that there's no way that anybody should have gotten into that Capitol building, and how that happened. I I'm not going to make any accusations, but that's not okay. And as many people are saying, obviously, if these were people of color, we'd be counting bodies at this point. The fact that these people are just standing around and no one seems so far to be upset is a little bit of a shock. And I overstated that. People are upset, but so it is currently my understanding, in terms of the police, that, and this is, I have no inside information. This is only what I have looked for. All right. So everything I say today about the events of today is going, not all of it's going to be right. At least 20% of it's going to be dead wrong, because I've heard the wrong stuff or I've paid attention to the wrong stuff. So please be aware of that. It is my understanding that the Washington, D.C. police were in charge of protecting the Capitol today, and said that they were told not to engage with protesters. And that's why they did so. So I just saw somebody said they let people in. I reacted to that video the same way, and I actually called somebody who was a police dispatcher, and he said, I don't know what happened, but I do know it looks like they were told to stand down. And who knows why? We don't know. But I think there's certainly a lot that's kind of come out of the wash there. Now, that being said, I do think, I mean, I'm not going to go down that route. There's obviously, we need to continue to re-examine the role of police and all that. I've talked about that before, of perhaps more, not more interest. That's incredibly important. But in terms of today's coup attempt, the real issue, there's two real issues right now. One is President Trump. President Trump has urged this on. He today, in the middle of the day, urged these people to do exactly what they've done. When Joe Biden goaded him into doing something to try and make them go away, he made it worse. It certainly looks as if he has launched a coup against the United States government. And it is what happens from now is going to be very interesting. I will tell you personally, I have a very hard time believing that that he will be president after about 24 hours from now. I don't see how he stays in office for the next 2 weeks, and I don't have a prediction for what happens. My bet has always been with Donald Trump on a resignation, that he would resign. Because he would otherwise face either being pushed out of office with the 25th Amendment, or be impeached and convicted. which could happen tomorrow. I mean, you could do an impeachment vote tonight. There's already at least one representative preparing articles of impeachment, and the Senate quite likely would convict, but he might leave before that. I mean, I don't know, but think about it. Do you see this going on for 2 more weeks? So then in terms of the coup, and I'm trying to watch over here. Okay, so that's another thing. Lindsay Luke just said the Capitol Police were in charge of securing the area, and actually that's dead right. That that when it first happened, all the police were supposed to do was to get our government out of there. So when the people were first storming into the Capitol, the job of the police was to get the senators and representatives and the staff and everybody else to safety. And there's a great story about that because, and I didn't think about this until about a minute ago, the electoral votes were in that chamber. And I don't know about you, I would not have thought, oh, hang on a second, I'm going to go get the electoral votes. But darned if some staffer didn't. A female staffer was like, okay, before I save my life, I'm going to save the electoral votes. So she did. She got the original electoral votes. Like, way to go, girl. If I ever get your name, I promise I'm going to put it in headlights because that's cool thinking. So that's why they didn't do anything at first. But then the question is, why are they still there? And I will also add to that, there's got to be an investigation, of course, but there is something about the desire not to see bloodshed in our capital. I mean, I think that is a bit of an issue here. Anyway, whatever. I don't want to go into that, but I don't see it going on for 2 more weeks. So there's Donald Trump, and let me go one step further. As you know, right now, I'm not watching it because I'm here. Police have gone into to Washington, and they have gone. The National Guard has been mobilized. Now, there's an issue about the National Guard in D.C. It's the one place where the National Guard answers to the president, not directly. I believe he answers first to the Department of Defense, but the Department of Defense, of course, if you remember, as soon as he lost the election, Trump got rid of his, I think, a 4th Secretary of Defense and replaced him with a lackey. So he at first would not let the National Guard go in. The 2 different groups asked for the National Guard to go in, and the Department of Defense refused. Now, of course, they're going in. But in the meantime, the police asked for support from other places. And I believe both Maryland and Virginia sent police. And because they have police departments have a mutual pact. So there's a lot of moving pieces on that part. And it's important that none of our government officers have been injured in any way, as far as I know. And that's really important. Whether you like them or don't like them, that's really important that our government has stayed intact. And that being said, people talk about, what are they going to do? I'll get to that in a minute. Our government is the people, it's not the building. So they can vote on the electors in the little boys' room if it comes to that, because it doesn't matter where they are, it matters that they are. So there are other options here. But anyway, to go back to Trump, and one of the reasons I say I think something is happening right now, and I could be wrong, I absolutely could be wrong, but the order for the police to go in, according to what, I pulled it up for you guys. Hang on a second, let me find it. No, it's not here. Here. The Secretary of Defense, Christopher Miller, gave a statement at 5:06 in which he said, and this I'm going to read it to you. Chairman Milley, and that's the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Chairman Milley and I just spoke separately with the Vice President and with Speaker Pelosi, Leader McConnell, Senator Schumer, and Representative Hoyer about the situation at the U.S. Capitol. We have fully activated the D.C. National Guard to assist federal and local law enforcement as they work to peacefully address the situation, et cetera, et cetera. But what's interesting about that statement and why people flagged it is because Milley did not say, I'm sorry, the Secretary of Defense, Christopher Miller, did not, he's the acting, by the way, we don't have one, we have an acting one, who replaced Mark Esper. He didn't talk to the president, he talked to the vice president. The vice president should not have that authority. So the fact that he issued a statement saying, I talked to the vice president, is a huge red flag to those of us who are paying attention to the order of orders, because something happened with that. And so in terms of what Trump is doing, that's one thing. All right. Let me go back to your questions in case I'm missing something. So somebody said, well, Capitol Police were totally overwhelmed. Yeah, but they shouldn't have been, right? So anyway, I don't want to get stuck I'm sorry, I got stuff coming in everywhere. I don't want to get stuck on the police because I think we can all agree that if they were black protesters protesting, oh, I don't know, something like being murdered, they would not be standing outside the Capitol now taking selfies or whatever they're doing. And I also think we can probably all agree that we should not have been, it should not have been possible, not even easy, it should not have been possible to breach the Capitol building. And that there's going to have to be, I would also suggest we could probably all agree that we have to rework our concepts of what police are supposed to do in America, which is a much bigger question. But I don't really want to spend a great deal of time on that one. I want to spend a little bit of time here on something else that I wanted to talk about. Hang on, I wanted to talk about this too. And that is, the second thing is what's really going on here. And I want to be really clear about what's going on here. There is no doubt that Joe Biden won this election. It is not close. It's just not close. So why are people like Josh Hawley from Missouri, Ted Cruz, both senators, Ted Cruz from Texas, the 11 other senators who signed on to that, and the up to 140 members of the House of Representatives pretending that there is something there? They are doing so because they want to guarantee that they can get Donald Trump's voters in the next election to support them either for their senatorships or to run in 2024. Josh Hawley, I'm sorry, it seems to be pretty clear. Josh Hawley is expecting to run in 2024, or was. He's not going to be anymore. And Ted Cruz jumped on board because he wants to challenge Hawley. They both have somewhat similar constituencies in the really kind of far right movement that has taken over the Republican Party. So they pretended. They didn't expect it to go this far. And the thing is that Trump is arguing it not because he's hoping for those votes in the future, but because he is determined not to leave office. So they had parallel tracks, but the as I kept saying in the letters, the senators and representatives who were going along were kind of like 2-year-olds pulling a fit on mom because they knew mom was going to have the guardrails up. They didn't expect to be taken at their word. They expected that they could grandstand and they could say all kinds of stuff. But at the end of the day, Joe Biden was going to go ahead and be elected, and they were just going to be kind of like a thorn in his side for the next 4 years. And everything will be lovely, and they could pick up the votes in 22 and 24. But it all blew up today. It all exploded in their faces. And now they're like, now what do I do? Because literally their supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol. That has never happened in American history. And, they're sitting in Pelosi's chair. The guy, did you see the guy dressed as a bull with the KKK tattoo on his stomach at the head of the Senate? I mean, the Republican Party just killed itself, basically. And that's a bit of an overstatement, but even, and it's going to play out in a lot of ways, but even the Fox News channel was like, oh my God, the Republican Party just they called it a gut punch today. Well, somebody just said, you don't see this happening because people have short memories. Maybe, but I promise you, people like me are going to remember. They don't forget. I think people care about history and about the things that have happened in the past. So anyway, I'm going to come back. I'm trying to watch both of these things at once. So, so they've got a real problem because they signed on to this. They promised they were going to do it. They made a big deal about it. It was going to be this big show. They were, and now it's blown up in their faces. And you will notice that you have not seen a statement, at least by the time I came on here, from Mitch McConnell. And, they're trying to tamp this down. Even Don Jr. said on Twitter, this is not how we behave. And somebody answered him and said, it's bigger than you now, Don, go home. We're going to take this over. And so now they've got this huge problem because they said they were going to make this big deal. They got the news. They're on all the shows. And now, like, if you've done that, what are you going to do? Are you really going to follow through at this point when your supporters have stormed the Capitol building? So they're trying desperately to figure a way out. And there's calls all over for resignations for people like Hawley and Cruz who egged them on today. So right now, if you're a Republican leader, and I'm drawing the distinction as well between old traditional Republicans and what the heck's going on now, you've got yourself a huge problem. And it's worse than you think as I'm talking here, because the other thing that we have a coup attempt, and I don't want to let that go because that's really important. But what happened this morning? Freaking Georgia flipped majorly to the two Republican senators are now Democratic senators, and both um, John Ossoff and the Reverend Raphael Warnock won by more than I can't say it, 0.5%. So there will not be an automatic recount. They won big time, big enough time in Georgia. That's not a landslide, but they won. What that means is that the Senate is now 50-50, and that means Mitch McConnell is no longer majority leader, because if there's a 50-50 split, the Senate majority leader is from the same party as the president. So the Republicans today lost control of the Senate, and as soon as they count Joe Biden's electors, the White House, and of course they'd already lost control of the House of Representatives. And now why do they care about that? I mean, aside from the obvious, because as I've said again and again and again here, that the only way the Republicans have continued to stay in power since at least George W. Bush, not even the first Bush, George H.W. Bush, is by gerrymandering and by voter suppression. And this really is not arguable, and you can believe what I'm saying about that, because the Republicans have not won a presidential election fair and square, except for George W. Bush's second one, 2004, but that was in the middle of a war, and Americans don't turn against a president during a war, since George H.W. Bush in 1988. And the reason that matters is they haven't won the popular vote is because you can count the popular vote, and you can say that look, when you're not gerrymandering, you're not screwing around with stuff, the Republicans can't win. And they know that, and they've said that. This is not rocket science. So the problem for them now is that if the Democrats actually pass what they're talking about, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, for example, that actually protects the right to vote, and they actually level the playing field and put in charge of the Justice Department somebody who is going to protect the right to vote in a way that Trump's Justice Department did not, the Republicans are done for, and the current crop of Republicans are done for, and the reason that matters, of course, is because when that happens, we're going to get business regulation again, and we're probably going to raise taxes. And if you remember Joe Biden's plan for raising taxes, it was for people who made over $400,000 a year, and that's not going to be unpopular. I mean, how many people do you know who have income of more than $400,000 a year, who are now paying significantly less than they did even before what's his name, Trump? So this is the moment. This is the moment. This day is the moment when the Republicans sit there and go, crap, we've lost it. We've lost it all. And now you've got people literally storming the Capitol to try and take it back. And you've got people watching this going, I don't want to be on the same team as the guy dressed like a bull with a KKK tattoo on his stomach sitting in the Senate. That's not what my country is about. Today is a crisis moment for the Republican Party, but not for America. And let me do that in a second. I want to call out the fact, as somebody just texted me, of course, this is what happened in Michigan. This is exactly what the Trump supporters did in Michigan to Governor Gretchen Whitmer, and the president egged it on. So why am I not I'm horrified. I cried when I saw the people going the way they did into our Capitol building, and I don't want to downplay what's happening. It is a moment I truly never thought I would see. Actually, to be honest, I thought I was very concerned about something which is, to my mind, worse. And had Trump won this last election, I don't want to say what I thought was going to happen, but it was worse than this. But somehow that when he lost, I didn't think we were going to come to this. So I don't want to downplay this moment. Many of us have been saying, I've been saying this since Reagan, as you know, that this is where that branch of ideological thought was taking us, is precisely to this minute. But what's happening right now is that the reason this is happening right now is because ordinary Americans have woken up. And there were a lot of bad things that have been happening for a really long time that people just weren't looking. And I'm going to pick here again on Black Lives Matter, if you will. The Black Lives Matter movement is incredibly important, but it is not news that white law enforcement officers have been killing Black people. They've been doing it forever. The fact that people are now noticing and caring is a really big deal. And a lot of this kind of stuff, let me be more specific. A lot of the attacks on our democracy have been going on quietly for many years, and the people who were calling attention to them were marginalized. They were thrown out of office. They were called socialists. They were called communists. They were called agitators. They were called whatever. And a lot of people just didn't pay attention and didn't think about it. And good people who were like, yeah, whatever, that person must have deserved it. And now a lot of people who previously were not involved are paying attention and saying, wait a minute, that's not my country. And so as we're sitting here horrified at where we are, and Joe Biden saying this is not our country. No, this is our country, but it doesn't have to be our country. And that's the place where I am. And I started this by saying that as horrible as this is, this is not going to succeed. I mean, Joe Biden won that election. They are going to certify those votes. They had the votes all along to certify them. That's why so many Republicans could pretend that they were against the certification. Not the certification, they've been certified, the counting of those votes. They are going to count Joe Biden and Kamala Harris in as president and vice president. They just are. And this attack on our system is not going to stand. Donald Trump is not going to be president after January 20th. But as I say, I don't think he's going to be president for 2 more days, because I don't see how he continues to give orders under this circumstance. And truly the thing that worries me, the only thing that worries me right now, is that so many Americans will have watched this and thought, phew, we dodged a bullet, it's over. It's not. The work starts now. It doesn't end now. This is where the work starts. So if I have a thing to implore you to do, I'm sorry, I'm looking at this. Okay. If I have a thing to implore you to do, it's don't forget this. Don't forget what it felt like to watch our government fall, because a government doesn't only fall by violence. It also falls when people stop paying attention. So, in 2 years, you might think, whatever, Biden's doing okay. I don't like some of his appointments, but whatever. I don't have to pay attention anymore. You absolutely have to pay attention, because these people are not going away. They're going to be silenced. But the minute that we stop taking up oxygen is the minute that they take over and they come back again. Because this again, for all that we talk about communism, fascism is just as big a concern in America, maybe more, and I could explain that. Now, I don't want to say this is an academic debate. Let me just say I don't believe these people are fascists, but it doesn't matter, because their techniques and where we're going is the same way. That's an ideological distinction that many of my colleagues would disagree with me on, but I just want to lay that out there in case any academics are out there going, wait a minute, I do think it's fascism. I'm going to say, no, I don't, but only for distinctions that only matter to those of us who study these things. So let me, I'm trying to watch this. I hope nobody's thinking I'm being neutral. Somebody's saying I'm being neutral. I'm not neutral at all about the American government. A couple more things, and I don't know how long you guys want me to do this. I feel like I'm trying to be comforting, but I don't really have a lot to give you. I don't know anything you don't. I guess I know the history. And actually, you know what? That's exactly what I'll do. I'll tell you the history of why this concerns me now maybe in a different way that it concerns other people. And that's that, of course, we have lived through this before, not at a national level, but at a regional level, when white supremacists took over the American South after the Civil War. Remember, the Civil War was supposed to stop this, excuse me, shit. We were supposed to get a democracy. And yes, at the time it was defined only as male and only as white, but then they expanded it to include African Americans. They did not expand it to include indigenous people or Asian Americans or Mexican Americans. They didn't expand it that way, but it had the seeds where it could have been expanded then. And it didn't. And it didn't because white supremacists first attacked people based on their race in the American South. But when that didn't take, because that's, of course, what the Civil War had been about, they turned to a different kind of language and began to attack them on the grounds of class. The idea that somehow we don't want poor people to have voices in American society. And that has been deployed again and again and again in American history to say, oh, I don't mind women, for example, having a voice, but just not those women, those feminists, those whatever. And what happened in the 1870s and through the 1880s and the 1890s is gradually a lot of Americans who just were good people kind of listened or didn't listen enough and said, well, you're right. I had no problem with African Americans, although that's not the word they were using, but I don't want poor people to be taking my stuff. And when they did that, they stopped caring and they stopped paying attention. And when that happened, the American South became a one-party white supremacist state. And it wasn't just African Americans who were cut out of the vote, although they obviously were the ones who suffered the most, including of lynching. It was also poor people. And here's why, and they got the American South became a white supremacist one-party state from 1877 through to the Civil Rights Act in the 1960s. And why do you care about that? If you don't really think you care necessarily about race issues or American history, you care about that because look what happened to the American South. It was the poorest, most backward, uneducated region in our country until World War II. Because when you have a one-party state, you have a state that has no interest in answering the needs of anybody but the people who belong to it, and you answer them by corruption. You go ahead and you make sure that your people get stuff and nobody else does. So that when I think about that, we have done this before, but we don't have to do it again. And I will point out that for me, the hardest, I'm trying to read these. The hardest numbers for me, the hardest moment for me today was seeing the Confederate battle flag in the United States Capitol. It's no accident that I wrote a book called How the South Won the Civil War and talked about the ideology of the Confederacy and how the ideology of the Confederacy was once again assaulting our democracy. And what happened today was literally we saw the flag of the Confederacy inside the U.S. Capitol, which of course is being built during the American Civil War. And what was at stake there was truly the concept of democracy. Are we a nation in which we really believe in equality before the law and in which we really believe that people of color and women and everybody should have a say in our government? Or do we embrace the ideology of the Confederacy that says that a few rich men really know how to run everything better than everybody else does? And so what we need to do is we need to concentrate money in that small group, and they will go ahead and they will invest in the right things and have the right connections and make money for all of us. And I believe in democracy. I believe in what is essentially crowdsourcing ideas, crowdsourcing innovation, and making sure that it's all of us, ordinary Americans, who direct our country. Because here's a newsflash. We're not going to get it right all the time, and some of us are going to have completely loopy ideas. But when you have all the ideas on the table, you look at the world in a really different way, and you make the right decisions. People come up with all kinds of great ideas in a way that you don't get if you're sitting in a room with just 5 old white guys or 5 old white women, or whatever your particular demographic is. That democracy works better when in fact we really do believe in everybody's voices. So to see that flag in our house of democracy, um, to me, said it all. And it's time that we really, once and for all, get rid of this concept of oligarchy, this concept that drove the Confederacy, and the concept that has taken over the current day Republican Party. Um, so, um, so I'm seeing some of the questions here. Yeah, there were definitely Confederate flags flying. Um, so people are asking once again, okay, questions marking. Why are people who are not rich men supporting Trump? And that, I've talked about that a lot. There's a lot of work being done on how demagogues get power, and part of it is by the language that they use to talk to people who have been disaffected, who have been hurt by the economy, for example. And what they say is that, it's not your fault that coal mining, for example, is being destroyed by modern technologies. The problem is those people. And who those people doesn't matter. It's just a rhetorical device. And I promise you that I will hurt those people. And so long as you stay with me, I'm going to make you great again. And so people sign on to that because they hate somebody else. The enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of idea. And because they want to believe that they're not those people. They're not whatever group is being denigrated by the leaders at the top. And I think there's a lot to that. I will also say, though, I spent a lot of time this morning before all this was happening reading and learning about QAnon. And one of the really interesting pieces about QAnon is that, as somebody pointed out, that one of the things that makes QAnon sort of distinctive as a role-playing game is that rather than doing what demagogues like Trump do and saying, I'm blaming these people, what they do is they say, you can be part of the solution. We can go ahead and fix this. And people have asked how to reach out to Trump people, and I have repeatedly said it's as if you've got a friend in an abusive relationship. You can't attack that head on because your friend will only cling tighter to that relationship. So what I've said repeatedly here is that you need to model what you believe is healthy about government. You have to say, well, I think my government should do X, or my government should do this, rather than saying, your government sucks, right? But one of the things that I thought was interesting about that information that I was reading about QAnon is the idea that it's important, I think, going forward to empower people to make things better. Not to just say, hey, you're out of work and your life sucks, but to say, hey, what would you like, what would make this country better? And fortunately, we're going forward with Biden, who's trying to do that exact thing. Mind you, Biden's not going to get it all right. He's human. But we have the opportunity to put in our oars and work with him and the people around him to try and make things better. Somebody asked what needs to happen about what needs to happen to make Biden the same thing still holds for what will now make Biden president. Okay, so that is that Congress has to hear and accept the votes. And the reason that took a long time is that these senators and representatives have sworn that they're going to stop the votes in the states that Trump has contested. There was never any grounds for that. Just for the millionth time, those electoral votes have been certified by the governors of the states, which is what has to happen. This is so pro forma that interns used to sit in this and listen to it because nobody else wanted to be there. Somebody just said the woman who was shot today was killed in our capital. I just saw that coming through here. So that still has to happen. Congress has to accept those votes. But like I say, this is now coming down to the Republican Party. It's possible and ought to be that the senators who said they were going to complain about those votes withdraw their objections, because the guys in the House can't do it without support from the people in the Senate. There's only 13 senators. If they went forward and retracted their objections, they could just go through them and do them really quickly. But whether or not those senators are going to be willing to do that is another question. I do want to point out that they do not have to be in the chambers to actually hold meetings. They can do that in a different place. So this can happen, and it will happen. I expect fully that will happen before midnight tonight. That they will be adamant that they are going to get through this stuff tonight, just on principle. And if they don't, it will be because the Republicans have refused to do so, and they should absolutely be held accountable for doing that. Okay, so what else do you want in the few minutes? Do you have enough? Is there more? Let's see. Oh, somebody's saying you have a paid subscription to my newsletter. You'd pay more if you could. If you do have extra money right now, food banks are desperate. That's where I've been just throwing monies at food banks. We will work this country out, but that would be a good thing. I'm seeing stuff go by here. What Congress doing ceremonial? Yes, but not really. They still have to do it. 25th Amendment. What would you like to know about the 25th Amendment? 25th Amendment is interesting. It's actually really interesting because the 25th Amendment is a number of ways to guarantee government continuity in the case of a problem. And I love the 25th Amendment because people, if you read about it, it'll tell you it came from JFK after JFK's assassination, but it actually didn't. It came from Eisenhower. And that's really significant because Eisenhower, of course, had been in both in World Wars I and World War II. And in World War I, he worked under a leader who lost it, kind of battle fatigue or whatever, but he made a bunch of really bad decisions that killed a bunch of people that didn't have to die. And Eisenhower saw that, and he recognized that even this general, who was a very good general, could not recognize that he was making bad decisions because of the stress he was under. So he recognized that as commander-in-chief and as the president, that he needed to be told if he was not okay. And his health was poor, and at one point he was going to be operated on, and he had a personal deal with his vice president, Richard Nixon, to take over for him if something happened to him while he was being operated on. But he knew that wasn't good enough. So he said to people, we need a system. And and then they're like, yeah, sure, we'll make a committee and we'll do that. And nothing really happened. And then, of course, JFK is shot. And when that happens, Congress is like, oh, crap, we need a system. So they put together the 25th Amendment. And it does a number of things. It guarantees for there to be continuity in the vice presidency if something happens to the vice president. Because if you think about it, in the past, when we had lost a president under Lincoln, for example, or Garfield, the vice president stepped up, but there was nobody to replace him. And there was always kind of a guess, like, what happened here? And so now we have a procedure for getting a new vice president if something happens. And the first time that was done was under Nixon, when Spiro Agnew resigned. Nixon appointed, if you remember, Nelson Rockefeller of New York to be the new vice president. And we also got a system for removing the president. But the system for removing the president requires, it's a fairly complicated system because you don't want somebody to just say, oh, I don't like the decision, I'm going to declare him crazy. It involves the vice president and a majority of the cabinet who have to go ahead and say, no, we disagree. We think that the president is not mentally capable right now for whatever reason, and they step in. But then the president has the right to go ahead and say, no, I'm okay, and present material, and then there has to be a vote on whether or not he's really okay or not. The real thing that's supposed to happen right now, not necessarily in this moment, but if you have a president who's behaving in the way he is impeachment. And I would love to be a fly on the wall right now. I know, as I say, people are preparing articles of impeachment, but they could, in fact, go ahead and impeach him tonight and have the Senate hold a vote tonight. I don't think that's going to happen, personally. I would expect that there is going to be real pressure on him to resign. We'll see, though. We'll see. I don't have, so again, Corey Cowan has asked, the New York Times stated that Pence, not Trump, ordered in the National Guard. Yeah, that's what I said at the beginning, and I will read it to you again because it's still up here. At 5:06, the acting Secretary of Defense, who is Chris Miller, who replaced Mark Esper, who was an actual Secretary of Defense immediately after the election when Trump fired Esper, released a statement at 5:06 saying, quote, Chairman Milley and I just spoke separately with the Vice President, with Speaker Pelosi, Leader McConnell, Senator Schumer, and Representative Hoyer about the situation at the U.S. Capitol. We have fully activated the D.C. National Guard. And again, that's significant because they didn't speak to the president. They spoke to the vice president. Now I'm just pulling this up here. Trump is continuing to tweet, and things will happen tonight. He has just released really what is quite an unhinged tweet, and I said he would not be president by tomorrow at midnight. It might be tonight, unless somebody. It might be tonight. This tweet is really quite unhinged. What else is happening? I'm not going to be able to get a lot of stuff more here from you. So other questions. What have we got here? All right, I'm not seeing questions here, and I'm not entirely sure if you need anything else from me right now. Again, people are asking about the Capitol Police. I do not have the answers about the Capitol Police, except to say that they did get the entire government to safety, which is what mattered more than anything. And they absolutely should not have permitted the Capitol building to be breached. And there will undoubtedly be a number of investigations about what the heck happened and why it happened. Let me see. People are asking about the people are asking again about the Republican Party. Will the Republican Party split? Oh yeah. This is a done deal. The Republican Party now either has to disown these people or go down in flames with them. And that's, I'm sorry, I wasn't clear when I said that the Republican senators are now in a terrible place, because you can't sign on to this movement right now, ever. You know, they have just breached the United States Capitol. That anybody who is in lockstep with them is done politically on a national level. So long as we keep the heat on them, and you can already see people moving back toward the middle and trying to say, oh, don't do this, we didn't mean this. And as so many people are saying, it is too late to say we meant for this to be peaceful. People like what's his name, Josh Hawley from, the calls are coming in from national leaders now for Trump to resign or be removed if he does not resign immediately. I'm so sorry. I'm smiling a little bit because I have a number of bets with people that he was going to resign before the end, and everybody said I was nuts. And I might be collecting in a really big way. Like, people owe me serious, like, baked goods at this point if that happens. But you can already see them trying to back away. And that picture of Josh Hawley giving the power sign to the protesters as they walked into the building, he's done. His career is over. You know, unless you really see this country becoming a fascist state, which I don't. You know, as I say, the votes. Do you really think Congress is going to say at this point, oh, oopsie poopsie, we're going to do what Trump wants? Not a chance. And he knows it. These unhinged tweets show that he knows that. Now, the other thing about the 25th that I should say is I said to you that the cabinet and the vice president had to sign on to the 25th, which is not entirely true, because there's another clause in that says, or any body that Congress shall maybe appoint. I don't have that language exactly right. But if you remember back in October, Nancy Pelosi tried to set up a bipartisan commission for this very purpose, and that legislation didn't pass. But, you know, the whole Congress is on lockdown together right now, or at least in their separate chambers. I would not be at all surprised if they are putting together some sort of a group to go ahead and have the authority to invoke the 25th Amendment to stop this from happening. Because at this point, quite frankly, um, um, this is suicide for the Republican Party. So even if you're a far right member of the Republican Party, you don't want to be associated with Donald Trump. At this point, you want your name to be associated with stopping him from what he's doing. Because at this point, the fact that the Trumpers have stormed the building and done the things that they have done means that their voters really don't matter nearly as much because their voters are going to jail. People who are doing this are going to go to jail. You want to be associated with the more moderate wing, and it would be a really cheap and easy way to try and indicate you're one of the good guys now, to say, I voted to get Trump out of office, because he's unhinged. I mean, he's totally melting down from what I'm seeing on Twitter, scrolling through here. I'm sorry, hang on a second. Somebody asked me, I didn't see that. It said, could I reiterate something? And it disappeared. People continue to ask me why the protesters outside are not being arrested. Again, I am not a law enforcement officer. What I saw, the protesters outside in the mall, are not doing anything. Now there's a curfew. It's stepped at 6 o'clock. If they're still there, I assume they're being arrested. But during the day, they weren't doing anything. The question that I have is about the people who had stormed the building. The idea that they could do that and get into the chamber and walk off with a lectern and all that is simply appalling. Those are pictures that will go down in American history. All right, I'm sorry. These are running way below. So this is a question. Somebody said he wants them to invoke the 25th because then he'll be able to get out of the lawsuits he's facing in terms of insanity. That's fair. That's actually really fair. That would not be that might in fact be what he's angling for. Who knows? That being said, the fact that he has the power to start a war, for example, right now, and has his finger on the nuclear code, says to me, what we care about more than anything is keeping our country safe and keeping our democracy safe. Yes, the question is, if they impeached him, could he run again? No, he could not run again. But stop worrying about him running again. He's 74 years old and in terrible health. I said that to somebody, forget it. He's not going to run again because he's old. And somebody said, well, Joe Biden is older. I'm like, yes, that's true. And he has said he's going to be a one-termer. This considers this a custodial presidency. But come on, Joe Biden runs, he rides bikes, he's in good shape. He's clearly got tons of energy. You can be a really healthy 80-year-old or a really in bad shape 50-year-old. Tell me, I know. It's not apples and oranges here. Trump is not going to be in any shape to run for office in 4 years, even if he's an angel of light. That wasn't going to happen. Somebody said this: a wave of democracy is crashing over our country, and I think that is absolutely true. Let me just say on that, I'm going to give you another 10 minutes to give you the full hour here. Let me just say on that, though, there's one thing about democracy, though, that I feel is really important for older people, especially older white people. Of which I am one. So I'm going to say it to my peeps here. There are going to be a lot of changes that you don't like and that maybe I don't like because we're older and we looked at the way the world was and, maybe some stuff doesn't seem to make sense to us. But that's okay. It's okay to have somebody come in and say, I don't like the way you did it. We're going to do it my way, for example, for a while. Maybe it won't work, but maybe it will. And a lot of, I think, being a good member of a democracy going forward for the next 4 years is, shutting up. I know a lot of you follow me on Twitter, and one of the things that I have done very consciously since this summer is I retweet African Americans a lot, even if I disagree with them, because I have a really big platform, and trans people and LGBTQ people, because I have a really big platform, and I feel like, I would not have written this tweet, but I don't know that they're wrong. So why don't we throw this into the mix and let other voices be heard for a while? And if that means we have to shut up, you know what? If it turns out whatever other people are suggesting doesn't work, we can step in then and say, hey, that didn't work, and we can fix that. But one of the things I think it's going to be important for older white people to do going forward is to listen more than we talk. I'm just throwing that out now. Omar, yes, we're going to articles of impeachment. Yes. Now, here's a question, though. People are asking about, is it possible that we could make Biden president before January 20th? No, I don't believe that's the case, and I would be against that. And I would be against that for the same reason that I got out of my pajamas today and actually because I never got dressed today. I was glued to the election in Georgia, and then everything that's happened since. And I put on actual work clothes before I did this today for the simple reason that guardrails are important. It was important for you people not to see me in my pajamas going, oh my God, but to look like I was actually a professional. And it's important for us to hold the guardrails of democracy where we can. We don't have to have Biden in until the 20th. We need to have a responsible adult in. And if that means Pence, that's great. If that means the next person in succession, that's fine too. We need to go ahead and keep things as, instead of throwing out everything and saying, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, we got to put Biden in, we got to do this. No, we need to go ahead and remind people that we have a system. That system works, certainly needs correction. That system works, and that we need to live by that. So no, we're not going to get, is there a scenario where they both go, both Biden and Trump go at once? Sure. Not Biden. I'm sorry. Trump and Pence. Sure. And that certainly has happened, not before in that order. Nixon and his vice president both left. Sure, they could both be impeached. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think that that is similarly to when Lincoln was assassinated and Andrew Johnson was a nutcase. Congress was like, we'd rather limp along with the nutcase rather than destabilize the country to the degree it is. And it would destabilize the country if you got rid of both the president and the vice president at the same time. Another thing also to remember is one of the things going forward is, I just said that white people need to shut up and listen, including me. Or magnify other voices. Engage, but magnify. Oh, by the way, I have good news, but I'll tell you that another time. Now's not the time. And that is there will be things happening that really upset people. And I would urge you, before you freak out about anything Biden is doing, to do what I've suggested. Think about why. So one of the things that happened this morning, after it was clear that Biden now has a 50-50 split in the Senate, was he announced that somebody just said, I'm not old. We're not old. Yes, sorry, Marilyn, we are. Is that as soon as that happened, what happened when Ossoff and Warnock won their elections, which right now Kelly Loeffler anyway is challenging, was that it meant that Biden had way more latitude with his nominations. So you've noticed one of the things you haven't seen is him making an a nomination for the Attorney General. Well, the minute that was done, the news dropped that he is going to nominate Merrick Garland to be the Attorney General. And instantly, a lot of progressives on Twitter were like, this is terrible. This is the moment to go ahead and go big, et cetera, et cetera. And maybe, but here was my take on that. It is my belief, and I've got feelers out, so I could be wrong, but Merrick Garland was always known as a non-political guy, which is one of the reasons that when Obama nominated him, if you remember Lindsey Graham, who, by the way, has been awfully silent today, hasn't he? Lindsey Graham from South Carolina, who's chair of the Judiciary Committee in the Senate, who would have to approve the Supreme Court nomination. The minute that Scalia died, Lindsey Graham said, oh, well, we would approve somebody neutral like Merrick Garland, but Obama's never going to nominate somebody like him. He's going to go with somebody wild. So Obama came out and called his bluff and nominated Merrick Garland. And then, of course, they would never even give him a hearing. Merrick Garland was approved for his federal judgeship unanimously, okay, through really partisan Senate. He was unanimous. So by putting him in the AG's seat, what Biden has done is he has made it look like the attorney general and the Department of Justice is going to be nonpartisan again. That's a really important signal to send after Trump politicized it with Bill Barr. But wait, before you say, oh, the Democrats play by the rules, nobody else does, why is that important? That's important because who's on the Department of Justice's agenda? The Trump administration. So he's put somebody there who looks neutral and is probably neutral to go ahead. And so it's going to be very hard for people to say, oh, it's a witch hunt, when in fact he's got this guy who is as neutral as he is. And then you're sitting there going, okay, well, that's pretty weak sauce, right? What does it mean to have put Merrick Garland, if he gets approved, into the AG seat? That means it's opened up a federal judgeship. That federal judgeship is a feeder, usually the feeder, into the Supreme Court. If the person to watch is who does he put into that seat? If he puts, somebody, let me cut to the chase here. I expect to see him put an excellent black woman into that seat as a feeder into the Supreme Court. So when you look at it that way, for a progressive to look at Merrick Garland, you can be pissed off at Merrick Garland. But then if you look at the longer game, it's actually really smart. So one of the things I would say is when you get really mad at something that Biden has done, and I promise you he's going to piss everybody off, including me, because you can't make this, you can't always, you have to keep a lot of constituencies happy. Try and think of the longer game. So I want to step back one more time here and say something that I think is maybe significant here when we think about American democracy and our lives. And that is that, those of us who watched Trump get elected knew what was coming. Especially historians and psychologists knew what was coming. And it was really, and I know I'm speaking to a lot of people who know exactly what I'm talking about. You get a personality like that, you've got to stop them out of the box, because if you don't stop them out of the box, you're going to have to stop them later on when they get stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. And what happened was the Republican Party kept thinking that they were going to be able to control him, and they could not. And Adam Schiff put it so well in the impeachment hearings and the impeachment trial of exactly a year ago. It was exactly a year ago that there was a trial of whether or not this man should continue to be the president of the United States. And never forget that the Republican Party signed on to him. They refused to hear witnesses. They refused to admit that he had done what he did in Ukraine, and which, again, now we're not even talking about what he did trying to change the vote in Georgia so he would be reelected. And Adam Schiff said, do you really think he would ever put the country ahead of his own interests? And the answer to that is clearly no. But where I wanted to go with that is something that I said this morning to two of my friends who become friends working on this project. And that is that we don't know how things are going to work out. When Stacey Abrams basically had the governorship of Georgia stolen from her, I was beside myself, because she's such an impressive character in so many ways. And I care about democracy. And I did not think that was a fair election. And I know she didn't either. She never conceded it, although she recognized it, which is an important distinction. And I was heartbroken. And so what happened? She goes on and she organizes the flip of Georgia and 2 of its Senate seats. And thanks to Stacey Abrams, things are much better than they would have been had she been governor, except, of course, for the fact that we might not have had such a problem with COVID in Georgia had she been there. Another story. But the point is, you don't know how things are going to turn out. You don't know how your life's going to turn out. Something that you think is terrible for you. I was denied tenure at my first job, which seemed heartbreaking, but it threw me out of academia into the real world. And I would suggest that was probably a good thing. You don't know what anything is going to happen. You don't know what the future is going to bring you. You don't know what the future is going to bring our country. But what you do know is character. Character really is destiny. People really do behave according to their characters. And this is maybe the moment where we say we're tired of sort of doing things by by hook and by crook, and hoping we can move the ball forward just a little bit to get what we want, and more to say, you know what, we're going to really focus on being good people and maybe trying to make that come alive in our democracy. So I think that I've got, yeah, somebody is saying, if there is a hero today, and there are many, I'm sure, it's the woman who picked up the votes. You know, if anybody finds her name, please send it to me, because I just think, talk about it's like Sacagawea being the one who saves the diaries, the Lewis and Clark journals. Like they're in a canoe floating downstream in an icy river. She's got a brand new baby and she's like 15 years old. And they're like, oh dear, the diaries are floating away. And she's like, I got this, guys. And she jumps in the river and she saves the canoe. This is like this one being like, oh, they're shooting? Hang on a minute. Let me get the votes. And she did. I just think that's unbelievably cool. All right. So today's a terribly sad day for our democracy. But we have the ability to really jump forward and finally drown these people out, finally make this country a democracy that really does value all of us, regardless of who we are and where we come from and what our gender is, or our level of ability, or our ethnicity, or our race. And if we do that, think of what we can unlock for ourselves and for the country, and maybe even for the world. And this is the moment not to be quiet, and the moment not to cower and say, oh my God, look at the guy in the bowl suit in the speaker's chair, but rather say, that is not who I want our country to be, and to insist on taking that back. All right, so now I'm going to go back and watch the news. That was an hour. It's terrible, people, but it really is not the end. It's going to be a really busy night tonight. We're going to be watching Congress. We're going to be watching the police. We're going to be watching the Republicans. We're going to be watching the government. But this was a coup that did not succeed, or it is a coup that is not succeeding, and I don't expect it to succeed. So I could be wrong. Like I say, none of us knows what's going to happen tomorrow, but we have been at many more dangerous times. This is less horrible, maybe, but the pieces are not in place for Trump to pull this off. Had he been smarter, had he been more able, we'd have been in a much worse place. Maybe in a sense, this is a vaccination, but by God, we got to come back and fight this infection in our body politic with every single thing we've got from now as far forward as I can possibly see. All right, so I am going to let you go, and I am going to go back and watch the news. I am going to write a letter tonight. I don't know what it's going to say. I really don't. And I will be here regular time tomorrow because, as I say, guardrails remain important. So anyway, so have faith. I mean, I got nothing else to say except, America's been through hard times before. And if this was Civil War II, they did a really bad job of it. Thank God. So anyway, I got nothing except thank you for being here, and thank you for being part of this project. And I have more hope for America than I have had since I became an adult, and I watched the rise of this movement, and I've watched the rise of this movement since 1980 and been terrified. And for once, I feel like people see, and they are not going to let it go on any longer. It's not going to be easy, but for once, I feel like there's going to be a new kind of democracy going forward, and I can't wait. All right, I'm going to see you tomorrow, and right now I'm going to go take a look at the news. I won't come back online tonight if anybody is watching for me. I will write a letter. Probably it's not going to go up until quite late. All right, thank you all for being here, and I'll catch you tomorrow. Have a good night.